Hello, my name is Josh. I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and I've recently been through a divorce. Thanks for coming back to my channel. Today I'd like to talk about something that I found interesting in my divorce, but then as I've talked to more and more people about it, it seems to be a really common attribute of divorce, and that is something that I call revisionist history. It is a very perplexing thing that happens, but I think it's also a very normal thing that happens in the divorce process. I remember at one point in time, shortly after my wife asked for the divorce, she said something along the lines of, I'm not sure if I ever really loved you, which was really hurtful. But it was also, I remember thinking to myself, and I actually said it to her, I've got a whole drawer full of letters and cards that say otherwise that you wrote. So then I start wondering to myself, okay, was she lying to me for all these years, or is she lying to me now? And the answer is I don't think either, really. I think what happens when people, and this could be anyone, right? This could be anyone that's wanting a divorce, is they go through and they start looking back at history, and as they're trying to justify whatever reason they're asking for the divorce, and right, wrong, or indifferent, whatever the reason is, they start going back and basically revising history in order to accommodate or justify the reasons that they're asking for a divorce. So this could look like, a trip that at one point in time you thought was this really wonderful trip that you guys took together, but now as you're hearing that story recounted, you're hearing it from a very negative perspective, which is one that has never been shared before, and actually you start hearing it and you're like, now you're making, there was one spat that we had one morning over, how to cook our eggs, right? But now it's being blown into this mega fight that it never really was. You'll find lots of those little things in your spouse that they're kind of going back and revising history. And it's really perplexing, and it's kind of hurtful. Because you start wondering in yourself, like, is our whole history as a couple, is it a lie? And I don't know if there's a good reason why it happens. I don't think oftentimes people, when they're doing it, are seeking to lie, but I think it's a game that our mind plays on itself in order to justify feelings that we're having. Now, the flip side of that is also true. I have seen people who are the person who didn't want to end the marriage, who, now that they're very hurt by their spouse leaving, going through and they see their entire marriage through the lens of the hurt that they are now feeling. So that's where I've seen also some of my friends go through, and stories that I heard at one point them say that were positive stories now have a negative twist to them, now have a very a sour tone as they're being described. And I've often wondered, why this happens. I talked to my counselor about it one time, and her explanation to me of why she saw it was because when we look back, especially for the person who didn't want to end the marriage, and you look back on those good memories, you remember them as good memories. And so you remember the joy or the love or whatever the positive emotion that you felt with that person in that memory. And so you want to dissociate yourself from that, because if you feel the joy and the love and the happiness that came, it's a stark reminder of how poorly you feel now, of the hurt you feel now, and why you feel that hurts, because that love and that joy is now leaving you. So it's really important that, for me, as I learned that, I saw this very early on, and I asked my therapist about it. It became very important to me to not go back and revise my history with my ex. We had lots of good times together, there were lots of times where I don't know how she felt, but I know that I felt very deeply in love with her. Now, things are different now. I can accept that things are different now. But I know at one point in time, it was different. I know at one point in time, we had wonderful memories with each other, that we enjoyed being with each other, that we laughed with each other, and we cried with each other, and all sorts of other emotions along the way. And those are part of the past. And so sometimes accepting that those are in the past is a difficult thing. And it's not beneficial to us really to revise those memories, to not let the hurt that we are feeling at the moment go back and sully all those memories. As I really thought about it, one of the reasons I thought it was such a bad idea, it was such a good idea to try to maintain my memories as they were, was so I could share them with my children later. So I could have positive stories to tell my children someday about when me and their mother were together. It wasn't just a constant bad thing. There was good that came out of it, including the children, of course. But there was good in that relationship. And yes, it ended. For whatever reason, it ended. But it's important for us to acknowledge those good memories so that we can share those with our children. I think another reason it's important for us to not revise our own history is because by revising our history, it prevents us from taking accountability for the things we did wrong in the marriage. Even if your spouse did something egregious, like, had an affair or something along those lines, none of us are perfect. Now, that doesn't mean, in the case of affair, it doesn't mean that you deserve for your spouse to have an affair. That is not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is we're not going to learn from the past if we don't acknowledge the past, if we don't try to see it clearly and understand the mistakes we've made so that as we go on in life, we don't repeat those same mistakes. So in order for us to really be accountable for the things we've done wrong, we have to try to do our best to maintain an accurate history of what happened in our marriage so we don't repeat the same mistakes again. And I think the final part is if we want to be a person of integrity, which is a difficult thing at times, we have to accept the good and the bad. We have to not try to cover up who we are, the flaws we've had, or the mistakes we've made. We need to be honest about that and not letting our lens of pain change our history allows us to act with more integrity. It allows us as we move forward to not feel like we have to change a story so we can paint our spouse as the bad guy. It allows us to accept that, you know what, I made some mistakes too, and you know what, we're divorced, and regardless of what happened, we're two people that are, we're all mistake ridden, and it allows us to accept that so we don't become prideful. Because the truth is, if we start thinking that we were perfect in our marriage, that's probably a good indication that something went really wrong and you had something to do with it. So it's important that we try not to participate in revisionist history. We can't control what our spouse does. If we see our spouse doing it, there's not a lot you can do about it. Maybe someday they come around and they acknowledge it. Maybe they realize, wow, I totally changed up our story to fit a narrative that was convenient to me at the time. But the reality is we have no control over them. So we can't really worry about that too much other than to acknowledge that it does happen. It can hurt. But all we can do is try to make sure that we don't fall into the same trap. Anyways, my name's Josh. I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This channel's my own. It's not sponsored by the church at all or endorsed by the church. I'm not a counselor or a therapist. I've just been through a divorce. I've learned some lessons. I've got a lot more lessons to learn. And I hope by sharing my experience, you can realize that you're not alone, that the divorce is hard, but that other people have been through it, and in the end, you'll be okay. Thanks for coming to my channel.